Welcome to Exploring Product. I'm Ryan Hatch and joined my co-host Rob Kaminsky. We are super excited today to host Alan Klement. Alan, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Wonderful. For those of you who don't know Alan, Alan's a thought leader in jobs to be done theory and consumer and market behavior. He's also VP of products with an S at Gmthub. And today we're going to talk about is simulated shopping and finding value propositions that resonate with the market. So Alan, super excited to have you on today and super excited to unpack simulated shopping together.
All right, let's do it.
Wonderful. So before we get into simulated shopping itself and what it is, I'm sure people are going to want to know. I thought we might just start off with, why simulated shopping and what problem or what questions does simulated shopping help us answer? And I know that one of the biggest problems in product is that most new products fail, right? So Alan, you want to take that a little bit and just talk about why new products fail and what you think some of the root causes are?
Yeah, I think it comes from two main reasons. I would say first off is, and we were talking about this before, the problem I would say is prediction, right? So I mean, just very simply, we all use theories in our daily lives. I mean, when I am anticipating just whether or not what happens if I throw something out of the window, for happens, and I anticipate that. Oh, I got loud kids here in the background.
That's okay, man.
Yeah. All right, very good. So even when I'm thinking about what I should do, things are okay still?
Are we losing him? You still there?
You might be good now. You still there?
There we go. Alan, we lost you for a second there.
Yeah. I think I had a power outage over here. That's moving to the more of the woods has done that for me. All right, so it's all about prediction, right? So we use theory in everything that we do in our lives, right? Theory is just basically using a belief about how the world works to anticipate what will happen in the future. So, and whether we're aware of it or not, when we're developing new products, we are making a prediction. Right, we're making a prediction. I think people are going to love this thing, or they're going to love it, so on and so forth. That is technically a prediction. And whether you're aware of it, you are using some theory to construct that prediction. So I guess the first thing there is a lot of people are just not aware of that they are actually using theory. And even if they did know they're using theory, they probably don't have a very good theory to work with. The second thing, though, is that, which kind of is related to the first, is that if you don't know that you should be using theory or that you are using theory, you have no way of asking why, like why things went wrong. And this is, for example, one of the big criticisms I have with the lean startup approach, which is, let's be honest, it's trial and error. Oh, we'll do this and then we should learn something and then magic will happen, then we'll know what to do next. But there's actually no theory behind it, meaning there's no mechanisms to help you ask, well, how do we find out which parts of it broke down or not? So I think, a big challenge in increasing the success of products that we release to the market and minimizing the risk of them being a failure, I think starts off with recognizing those two things, right? That we're making predictions and that these predictions are based upon a theory, but then also that we should have a theory that enables us to ask questions when things don't work.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about was it's impossible to guarantee success, right? And that we don't live in a deterministic world, right? Prediction cannot be 100%.
Yeah, it's right. It's possible to do everything right and still fail. That's the way it is. So. Which again, having the right theory about understanding why maybe something did or didn't work will help you kind of zero in on that. which is, a good thing, because it could be, again, if you have a good theory, and we can talk more about, examples of that going forward, but you could say, look, it looks like that this product should have been a success, but it wasn't. Maybe we just released it at the wrong time, for example, or maybe we should wait a couple years and try it again, or maybe we should, take some other approach to do this and not just completely give up on the idea.
Or maybe lots of things, because there are a ton of variables that play into whether a product's successful or not. Right. I think that's why it's so hard. You also talked about, like, with creating new products, data from the past won't invent the products of the future. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's important to understand, and this goes back to the theories part. So I've been using the word theory a lot. I'll kind of give a little context of that. When I talk about theory, I'm talking about jobs to be done theory, which is this study of, it began with the study of why consumers, we call it hire and fire products, or we could just say adopt or abandon products. So we're just trying to come up with some theory to help us predict that behavior. But while we were doing that investigation, we started recognizing that this characteristic of markets and understanding them as evolutionary systems. And that kind of comes back to what you were just alluding to, because they're evolutionary systems, there's three important criteria. The first one is that they have irreversible time. So things change over time. And also this means that markets and consumers have a memory, which is important. And the second thing is around they produce variety, which is, of course, making new products, or consumers adapt products. And also third thing is that there's some selection process going on. Those are three characteristics. We can go into that if you like, but going back to your initial thing about why data from the past does not work in the future, well, it's because of this irreversible time element. So if you're sampling the market, for example, what consumers are interested in last year, and then trying to use that to, anticipate what they will want 6 months later, it's not going to work, right? Or you have to take into consideration that, that there's a half-life to that data, because the information markets are always producing new information. Consumers are changing what they want. Variety, new products are being introduced. So if you're just relying only on data from the past, I mean, sure, you might have a perfect understanding of what the market was a year ago, but that may not be relevant today. It's kind of like using the kind of analogy that I like to use, that when people look to data about the past, market data from the past, and trying to use that for the future, that's a bit like using a weather report from 6 months ago to determine what you're going to bring on your trip next month. It's just ridiculous. So that's why we have to always kind of respect this irreversible time element of markets, and not, I think directionally, data from the past can be helpful, but only directionally. We should always think about, exploring the market in ways by, like, putting new things into the market and seeing it how it reacts. I think that's the best way to think about it. And I think, and I'm going to do it, but it's cliche, but that guy, he knew his stuff. Steve Jobs, right? It's totally cliche, but God, he really nailed a lot of things right. This is what he meant when he said that sometimes consumers don't know what they want until you show it to them. That's what he was getting at, right? Because again, if you ask consumers what they want, well, they're just going to tell you what they want today, and they're going to react to what they do or don't like about how they live and work today. They're not going to be reacting to some new possible future that you are thinking about creating.
Right. The best way to predict the future is to invent the future.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Right. And the weather example is interesting, because if you just like average the weather from the last 3 months and just, project, well, that must be, what's going to happen the next 3 months, just because it's law of averages, law of large numbers, right? And all of a sudden, well, we're hitting fall now. Like the past 3 months is zero predictor of the next 3 months. And it's interesting, because you talk about theory, and I think about, well, what does that mean to people? And I mean, one of the things that I think with the weather analogy, it's like data if we just take the data and just average it for the next 3 months, it doesn't work. But the only reason weather predictions are even possible is because they put that data into a theory, into a model, and the model is used for prediction, right?
Yes, exactly. Yep, that's exactly it. That's why when I'm encouraging people to think about how to create new products or explore what customers want or will want, right, in the future, it's best to work with now data, as it were, as much as possible. And even better if you're able to generate that now data, and using some sort of research method that can kind of help you. It's like you won't really know like how the bear will react until you poke the bear. So it's like you have to poke the bear and see what happens, and then you'll know. You can't because maybe he'll just continue sleeping, or maybe he'll get up angry, or whatever it is. But you won't really know until you do it. So I kind of use that same thinking when thinking about products. You won't really know what customers want until you put the thing in front of them and see how they react to it.
Yeah,
it's interesting. It almost makes me think like and we're going to get into simulated shopping, obviously, as the core of this. You talked about past data. Ideally, you have current data or something really close to present to make decisions. But I almost view, and we'll get into it, but simulated shopping is a way of almost creating future data or backcasting it into the present, so to speak, so that you can make decisions. So I think that's super fascinating.
Yeah, Alan, when you and I started talking about this stuff several months ago, I came to you because I had just done all of this research for a new product, done all my customer discovery very well, super proud of it. Came up with the offer, the value prop, the whole thing, put all the messaging, everything that seemed to be like, man, this was going to be it. And I put the landing page out there and set it live. And what I got back was not a lot of conversion rates, like very low conversion rates. And I had a lot of clicks on my ads, had like almost no signups, if you will, or conversions. And I called you because I was like, Alan, what do I do? Right? Like just trying to bounce this off somebody, because what lever do I pull on? Right? Which lever is it? The pricing that's wrong? Is it the value prop that's wrong? Is it the target audience that's wrong? Is it the messaging, the imagery? Like there's so many things. Like a value proposition it's so many things tied together. And what you told me on that call was Ryan, they're all interrelated, right? They're like so interdependent that the experiment I was running, it was just really hard to see, to know what to do just from a landing page test. And so we're going to talk about simulated shopping is how you can actually get people's responsiveness to the problem and a solution all at the same time. But I'm excited for where we're going. But I think that was one of the things that I realized is that the problem and the solution in the value prop, they were all so interwoven. And I think that's what simulated shopping, I hope, is going to help us with, is teasing those individual parts of the offer to be separate things.
Yeah, if I were to suggest someone how they could visualize it, you're offering, and when I say offering, it's the whole thing. It's the product, the price, the positioning, the company making it. I mean, it's everything together. It's it's kind of it's really difficult. We can and we do it, but it's through iterative experiment. But you can't really so cleanly isolate variables, right? Because they're all tightly coupled. So like think about it. When I think about an offering, think about it like as a spider web. So like when you pull on price, when you pull on that one, when you start pushing in on price, well then you have to figure out how to affect everything else at the same time. So that's kind of how we think about when we're kind of designing these experiments. It's not the statistical way of from Fisher and all those guys 150 years ago. when they were studying, wheat crop and so on and so forth, or even kind of in industry where a lot of statistical work first came on. You can isolate, when you have a machine arm moving around putting in a screw, okay, you can isolate parts of that thing and break it down. But when you're talking with human behavior and how people think, they think about it all together. Like, again, I think you talked about this before. People get blown away when I show them the Prada phone, right? Or show them like a screen of the Prada phone. And they're like, actually, I showed it to someone last week and he said, oh, what is that? Some kind of cheap iPhone knockoff? Well, not cheap, but like some kind of iPhone knockoff. And I said, no, this came out 6 months before the iPhone. And he's just like, what? And I was like, well, it was just that it wasn't Steve Jobs standing up there and in his black t-shirt waving it around. It was released at Consumer Electronics Show by LG, and no one cared. So anyway, it's I guess also going back to that topic of it's possible to do everything right and still fail. There are certain variables that maybe you can't control or too difficult to isolate on their own.
Yeah. So everyone go check out Prada phone. Alan showed me, and I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. But let's get into it. So let's start talking about simulated shopping. So that's some great background, Alan. So what I'm going to do is pull up your dream one.
Oh yeah, yep.
And just have you start talking and walking through the deck slowly and kind of the intent behind each of these screens. And this is meant to be, by the way, for context, this is meant to be you sitting down one-on-one, kind of a customer interview type scenario.
Yep. So the questions we're trying to answer here, right, is, well, actually, let me back up here. The purpose here is we're trying to create predictions, right? Going back to the very beginning of this call. Right? So we are trying to help us, create really good predictions of if we do X, if we put X into the market, a product at this price that looks like this, made by this person, so on and so forth, how will consumers react to it? That's what we're trying to do. And we can kind of come back into, actually, if you want to have an interesting discussion, maybe loop back to this afterwards. It's actually okay to do this one-on-one and make an inference about the whole. We can kind of come back to that, why that works. But I'll continue on this thread. So for simulated selection here, we are trying to make that prediction of will the market select this tool. Then we're going back to the idea of markets as evolutionary systems, right? Irreversible time, produce variety, and selection. So we're trying to probe it, like, how will the market select for this offering? And will it select for this offering? So the idea that we do, and then there's different ways. So honing down now to what's going on here, we had a customer dream. Now this happened about a year ago. So I feel, and they've pivoted dramatically since then, which I can talk about why. But so this is why I feel it's fine to talk about this. It was about a year and a half ago. They were trying to figure out, okay, we have this. Actually, I'll jump right to it. They had this kind of like headband product that you wear. So they had developed this technology that was really great. It's kind of we'll call it a sleep lab in your home, which I think was even one of the messaging that we tried. Which, since I'm on it, this freaked people out, by the way. So that was kind of an interesting thing. People were like, what does that mean? But again, the idea is that they had developed this technology that measures your brain waves as you're sleeping, and that this can be used to help you figure out what you should change in your lifestyle so you get better sleep. And so like they had this amazing technology, and like, okay, how can we monetize this, if you will? And they tried different models, and it had never really broken out of. I mean, they'd sold thousands of units, but of course they want to sell millions. But it never kind of got out of that like early adopter kind of, people who really like to kind of, those, how to describe it, Ryan? You know what I mean? Those like, I'm trying not to say geeky people, but I think,
tinkerers,
tinkerers, like those people, right? So so there's thousands of users like that, but they were trying to go more through that diffusion curve. How do we diffuse this to that early majority, as it were, right? And so we're trying to figure that out. And they were trying different offerings and things, and they couldn't get it right. So I'm like, okay, well, let's actually do the simulated selection study and see what happens. So we've gone through different iterations of this, but the idea is this, is basically we start with, first off, kind of, how would you kind of describe yourself right now? So this is how we start off. So this is the purpose of this particular slide is to find out, okay, the person I'm talking to, if we're to kind of come up with our ICPs, which one do they fit into? Are they both of these scenarios, or are they just one or the other? Right? Are they someone who maybe has chronic sleep problems, or are they someone who maybe doesn't, but is what we call these lifetime or lifestyle optimizers? Or are they somehow some combination of both? And that
and you kind of ask them, hey, are you more this? Are you more that?
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, it's very simple. We say, oh, how you doing? I'm going to show you this screen, read it, and then tell me which one that you identify with most. And they'll just read it to themselves. And they'll be like, oh, and it might sound weird, but almost 100% of the time, they're like, oh yeah, I'm definitely the one on the left, not the one on the right. Or they'll say, I'm not really either of those. It's kind of interesting how people will give you, when you make it this concrete, they will give you a nice concrete answer, which I think is why we use visuals too. It's like, I'm not really that person on the left, or I'll be like, yeah, that's me. Like that alarm clock is right next to me and my eyes are open all night long and it drives me bananas.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Alan, I have a question for you.
Yes.
And we don't have to go down the rabbit hole with this, but how do you decide who you put this in front of? So like, what were you using for your recruiting to jumpstart this?
Yeah, absolutely. So these are people who should be our customers. Again, so we think of like who should be the customers. Again, trying not to think of going backwards. Like that's why we didn't like, oh, people who are, currently, you can do that. People are currently buying X. But, again, if it's a new thing and you're trying to create a new market niche, then technically that niche shouldn't exist. So there is no kind of prior to base it upon. You have to kind of like say like, look, we think that these types of people should be buying this product. So that's literally kind of how we start off.
Gotcha. So you use basically criteria that's available and you make a judgment of like people who do that should do this in our theory, our approach.
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
Should I continue on to the next parts, Ryan, walk through it?
Yeah, totally. I think one of the cool things is like, I'm actually neither, right? Like, oh, well then who are you? And then, you're realizing that I'm missing a segment in here, right?
Yes, exactly. That's the other thing too. Like, and then that also kind of helps us figure out that, like, if they say that, then we'll continue the conversation for a little bit, but we ignore everything they say, for example, because that's also an important thing to realize is you want to make sure you're finding out who you should not be talking to. Because there literally been calls where that happens. They'll say, oh, actually, you know what? I'm neither of those. I sleep fine, and I don't do any yoga, or I don't buy anything like that, or I'm not really a big exerciser. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, all right. Well,
yeah, you could actually DP people pretty fast and feel like.
Do you kick them out of the call, or do you actually have that conversation of like what else is going on in their world?
Yeah. Well, because we have them on the call, we will go to the next one. Like, oh, so then have you ever done these types of patterns? So I guess that means that you've never talked to your doctor about sleep problems, or you don't read sleep journals, or you've never kind of explored how to optimize your sleep or your fitness. And they're like, yeah, no, that's not me. Okay, great. It's kind of further confirming that disqualifying them. So then what we'll do is then we'll kind of slowly roll out some text. Now, this is kind of also the other thing too, is that we want to feed. Okay, so going back to the theory part, jobs theory, right? So we see consumers as adaptive learning agents. So like, for example, I call shopping is a information foraging process, which is basically I am gathering information to construct my preferences. Right, to figure out what's interesting to me, what's not, what should I buy, so on and so forth. So to help us kind of understand that process a bit more, we slowly feed them information and see how each new bit of information changes their opinion, or if it does at all. And so we'll slowly tease out things like, okay, if you see, sleep checkup, what do you think that means? Right. And it's also the other thing too, which is I think, this is actually probably a good point to mention it. Ryan, you had talked about, your issue with your thing before, and that is, a lot of times people think, oh, okay, well, if we're developing a new product, we'll start with some needs analysis, and then we'll, figure that out, and then build some product, and we'll study things in isolation, and then we'll put it all together in the end, and then we will release it. But what's, again, what we're trying to do here is to kind of, find out from them if they're able to even comprehend or extend what you put in front of them. Like, for example, a great way to disqualify what someone says is if you show them a new product, I don't know, here's this new thing, isn't it cool? Wireless headphones, whatever. And if they say, oh yeah, that's totally cool. That's so neat. I like that. Okay, so great. I like the color. I like the box. Like they're reacting to the thing. But what you want to get them to say, like, oh, well, what changes for you? Like, how is your life different because of this? And if they're just kind of like big question mark on their head, they're like, okay, they're feeding me BS, or they're just reacting to this because maybe that's what they want to hear. They want me to tell them that their baby's pretty. But if they can't connect those dots in their mind, then that you're talking to a dud here. So again, if I put like sleep checkup in here and they can't really, as I unfold information, so I go through it, like, what do you think about this? If they can't really like explain what that means to them or how it does or does not resonate with them, then, you can basically throw out what this person is saying. So that's kind of the process. So we kind of are just slowly unveiling to them, like, okay, well, here's kind of, some of the descriptions here. Here's some of the things of how it might work. And again, we're just kind of teasing information about, okay, here's the headband. How do you think, what do you think about this? Again, like this is a good example. People who give you good information are going to say, oh, okay, that headband looks cool. That looks really neat. I'm sorry, that's bad information, right? Because, okay, great. They're just telling me my baby's cute. But when they say things like, oh, okay, that looks uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm not, or like, I don't know, is that going to give my wife cancer as we're like laying in bed? That's good stuff. That means that they're actually are mentally simulating consumption of the product, which is what you want. So again, we're just kind of feeding them. So I said we're kind of feeding them more information. Are they able to connect the dots more? Are they kind of getting it? Like, how are they reacting to little bits of it at a time? And then this is kind of just how we like reveal the product to them. But also, as we're doing this, we also try to tie it back. So we said, okay, we're showing you this. We're showing you some of the qualities of this new thing. Like you said that this, so this, oh, that's pretty cool. I get to see this my sleep stages, right? Okay, it's interesting. Well, do you remember way back when we talked about this? How does that help you with this? And they're like, oh, I'm not really sure. Then again, you're kind of maybe like, okay, maybe there's something wrong here. But if it's like, well, if I knew my sleep stages, then I would know the optimum time to go to sleep, or I could get up earlier in the morning, which is I've always been wondering about, so on and so forth. It's like trying to get them to, again, mentally simulate, engage, and project themselves in the future with this product, which is what people do when they're shopping. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing. When you're looking at Amazon, like, what are you doing? You're thinking about using the thing. So we're trying to recreate that experience. Like, are they mentally simulating using this thing? So they say things like, oh, that looks hard, or, oh, yeah, that fits right in on top of my desk really easily. Then you know that you got a winner. So this is pretty straightforward. Like, and sometimes you get little interesting things as you get more and more granular. Like a simple example here is when we showed them this screen, they said, "Oh, Peric." They'd say like, "Look, it was kind of funny. This was almost every respondent said this. Like, oh, Peric, yeah, but that's not a real person. Like, I mean, we know that's like some kind of bot, right? Literally, Peric was on the call with us. Listen to this." So he actually was on. He's like, "No, actually, you're talking with me." I thought that was kind of funny too. And so this deck is much longer than what we would do. This is kind of a summary. We would never show people this many slides. It was just this for this purpose. This is just kind of the summary of everything, because we were iterating upon things. So when people say, oh, that makes no sense to me, I don't understand that, then we would try to update it for the next experiment and see, okay, they couldn't tie that particular chart back to how it helps them overcome their insomnia. Let's change it in a way where maybe we think it will. So then, this is basically going through the product. And then, we try different variations. Like we tried, okay, you've got the product. Now, what about this sleep club thing, right? And here's some of the qualities of it. And yeah, I mean, this was a big dud. People are like, look, I don't trust that because, who are these people on these forums? That's probably gonna be more confused. There's gonna be misinformation. I don't want that. Who are these people out there just making things up? Just like raising all these anxieties and trust issues.
Yeah.
And then finally, we get to the end part, which is we do like that game of Price is Right, as it were. So, here are some different pricing things or packagings. How much do you think these cost? Now, the exact number is not something that we trust because, people just make things up, like, oh yeah, it's $100 is a fair price. Okay, well, all right, well, okay. Like a lot of people just kind of like, will go and write that down. But I'm not going to trust people because I paid this person to talk with me. I'm not going to trust what they say. But what we can learn and is reliable is what choice set they put it in. So when they say $100, well, why $100? Oh, well, because I've seen products like this before, A, B, C, D, which are out there on the market right now, and that's how much those costs. Or, oh yeah, this would probably be $300. Because that's how much I pay to go see a sleep specialist, and this would replace seeing a sleep specialist. That's what you want to know. It's not $300; it's that it replaces a sleep specialist, as it were. And then we show them the price, kind of see how they react to it, and then which is it became a fun game with them. They perceive it, but again, it's kind of like you see this. What's your reaction? And in this particular case, that makes sense because products like that cost like that, but they couldn't really rationalize it with what it really replaces. I mean, some people said, well, I guess it would replace all of the effort in going to see a sleep specialist, taking a day off work, sitting in a doctor's office for half an hour, and then paying some copay or whatever it is. That was mostly that was like at the high end of it, of like the closest to accepting the willingness to pay. But at the very other end, we have people say that's ridiculous. I have this app on my phone. It's $5 a month. And it has this sonar thing or what, I don't know what they'll say this. I don't know what it does. But it just kind of measures me while I sleep and tells me if I'm sleeping good or not. And that's good enough. So you're not going to get oh, should it be $279 or $289? Those are things you have to do actually put in the market, but from broad strokes directionally, which is what we're looking for, right? We're looking for a multiply by zero factors here. What are the critical points that will cause this to be a failure? Which again, going back to the prediction thing, is also how we work. We can't, and we were talking about Ryan, we can't predict if a product will be successful. Again, no one can do that, right? That's why, weathermen don't predict more than 10 days out. And even then it's kind of dicey. But what we can do is say why it won't work. And so actually when we're working with our clients to construct a prediction matrix of this, we highlight the multiply by zero factors and say why it would not work. So we classify things not as it will be a winner and here's how much. We say it's either low risk or almost no risk or extremely high risk. And then we give them some plans of, okay, well, if you want to reduce these risks, here's what you want to do. So in this example for Dream, we said our recommendation, our prediction was this is a high risk offering for the biggest reasons. First off is trust. People perceive the way, they never heard of this before, the way the styling of it, the colors, the packaging, so on and so forth. It looked like a startup. Everyone kept describing it as a startup. And people did not want to trust medical advice from a startup or invest $300 in a product from a startup. So that's like the first thing. It was like, look, high risk because people just don't trust the brand, for one, at this price point, and also on the subject matter. And then, yes, of course, the other big thing was that when people are putting into a choice set, it was very often things like, for example, going back to said before, sure, it's inconvenient to go to the doctor's office for an afternoon, but my company's insurance pays for that. I paid $20, so it's inconvenient. But you know how people are crazy. Like they will burn half a day to save $50. So it's like, so when they say that, like, okay, high risk there for that, and a few other reasons there too. But it's mostly the two biggest things were, it was the trust, huge tank on the trust issue. And the other really big multiplied by zero factor was the choice set they were putting into. Like, I'll use some app on the phone, or or the other thing too, if they did mention the Oura Ring, which came up sometimes, they're like, yeah, but the Oura Ring seems more comfortable to use as I sleep. That looks really uncomfortable. So again, the progress was there. So we would validate, this part is totally accurate. The ICP is right. The progress, the needs, and so on and so forth. What didn't work was the offering. We couldn't get fitness in between the offering and the type of progress that consumers wanted. I've been spieling for a whole lot.
No, this is great. I think for me, one of the things I love about this, I think it's actually you talked about mental simulation, right? And it's actually like a tweet I have favorited since, I don't know when I favorited it, but like 2016 or something. It was when we were talking about this stuff. It was this realization that before people buy products, they first have to imagine in their mind how it will help them, how it will change the way they live and the way they work. And what I love about this, about simulated shopping here, is a couple things. I love the incremental revelation, I'll call it. Right, where it's starting out with just the sleep checkup. So what is that? Now I have to imagine in my head what that is, and you're getting a real sense of positioning, and are you communicating clearly? There's just the concept, and you can do this with nothing, right? Like you can do these first slides in just text form. I think that's pretty fascinating. And you said the sleep lab, like the next slide, caused people just to kind of like cower away from a lab. What am I, a rat? What am I going to have a whole bunch of electrodes on my head, right? Like it was off-putting. I mean, what powerful things to be able to realize this stuff really, really early on, before you're deep in development cycles.
So Ryan, you triggered me. I'm like going there with figuring it out early on. And so Alan, I'm super curious. Is this something you said about we can't predict a product will be successful, but we can predict why it won't work? Like that's really stuck with me. And so I almost look at this tool as, is it an evaluative tool, simulated shopping? Or is there a space for it where you can use it as a launch pad to innovate, right? As you're kind of conducting the early steps to this? Or is it a binary, will this work, will it not? And we'll show you why. How do you look at this, and where even our listeners might apply this? A lot of folks are working in startups with half-baked ideas. Is this for them, or do they have to have that, you talked about future kind of in their mind, that vision, and then work back to see whether it's going to be real or not, whether might actually work?
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if it was on this call or kind of during our warm up time before this, but you kind of talked about like, which is what people, it's like sometimes you see in Twitter, people are saying like, oh, how do I find an idea for a startup? Or like, how do I find an idea for a business? Right. I think, a lot of people do that. And then they think, well, I'll start by looking at people's problems. Like, oh, okay. And we kind of talked into that, and we can digress on maybe why I don't like that. But I would use this, and kind of going back to what Ryan said a bit, you could even use some of this stuff by kind of having conversations about how people react to this kind of stuff. Use this as like inspiration, right? Like, for example, suppose all that we had was literally this, right? We don't even, this is like where our ideas stop, right? And then, but let's just kind of put some words, literally words, because words and pictures and experiences and things, those are all information. So this is just a different type of information a consumer is getting to arrive at some judgment. So for this, and kind of where I'm bringing this to, we found that, for example, the combination of words, personalized recommendations, got everyone excited. Right? Because it wasn't just personalized, and it wasn't like, even down here, like by only, because like, for example, we'd be like, oh, we can make sure that you get the right recommendations even, or, a brain, because, we went through different versions of this, right? So, measure your brain activity and get sleep recommendations. People are like, whatever. But for whatever reason, the combination of personalized recommendations, that was like, well, that's what I need. And then like, well, why is that important? Well, because I read all this stuff from sleep magazines, and the top 10 ways to improve your sleep, and it's all general. It's not for me, individual. And then when I go to a doctor, the doctor's supposed to give me a personal recommendation, but she's just trying to get me out of there because she's got 10 other patients to see, and she just basically asks me a few questions and always gives me the same medication or something, which is a generic response. So people are like, I need personalized recommendations. So even, hopefully I'm answering your question, but that could even be a way of like kind of probing that kind of, fuzzy end of like, I guess, opportunity fishing, if you want to call it, of figuring out kind of like, like where do we begin with?
So if I were to play that back a little, what I'm hearing is you should have some thought into what the idea is. It ends up being the landing ground to trigger that, where they go mentally, which might take you to a new idea, but without that initial thought, you can't just say, like, ask them about their problems. Otherwise, to use your example, they might not be shopping for personalized recommendations. It might just be something that is there that they're not aware of. And only by you putting it out there in words or a picture can you trigger, oh yeah. And then you dig deeper, is it real, by asking why and how to actually validate that.
So again, and I love kind of challenging or poking people about like, oh, you talk to people about their problems or things of that nature. And, again, people like, we as product people, that's what we do. We sit around and think about people's problems or innovation, that kind of stuff. But like, look, we got to get out of our own biases here. Like, most people are like, God, I got to pick up the kids from work. I got to make dinner. Like, they're not thinking about granular, detailed, whatever problems around like, cord, taping up cords. They're just like, it's fucking cords. Like, they're not like thinking in minutia detail on a scale of 1 to 5. Like, how does it feel? Like, they're not there. They're like, I got the kids are. You heard me before. My kid's crying. Like, what's going on there? Like, they're just not there. But the other thing too is that like I think this is actually probably the more interesting thing for it. We like, when it comes to our problems or our experiences, we develop habits. What's the first way? Your consumers are fish in water, and they're not asking about like, why are we swimming in water? So when people are using a BlackBerry with a keyboard, they're like, well, yeah, they're swimming in water. Well, yeah, that's how you use a smartphone, of course. Like, what do you mean keyboard? Or that's how it is. That's what a smartphone equals screen plus keypad. Like, that's it. They're swimming in the water. So if you ask them problems, they're just going to react, oh yeah, well, sometimes my thumbs get tired, or sometimes it doesn't feel quite right. My fingers, they're just reacting to like the water they're swimming in. You have to like pull them out of that water and be like, well, hey, look, there's land. Like, oh, what? What is this air you're talking about? You have to show them new things and see how they react to it.
And I think that's also why your consulting agency that was called actually, idealized innovation, right? It's this
Oh, yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
It's the idea of taking them out of the water, the idea of bringing them into the future, right? But we have, as innovators, it's our job to innovate and create a new tomorrow, and
Yep.
project that and cast that for them, and that's what we're kind of doing here. I love how, like, if anyone listening's got an idea and they're trying to go validate it, there's lots of different ways to do it. But you can see here how effective this could be, rather than going and running, several thousands of dollars in keyword testing and trying to, launch all these ads and all those things. It could be as simple as a slide like this, right? And 10 conversations to figure out directionally what resonates, what doesn't, what freaks people out, what new anxieties am I creating with a sleep lab. And I think what's powerful about this, to do this kind of work, you don't have to have a finished product to do exercises like this, right? You can just get with a designer and dream up the future and run people through this incremental revelation and slowly feed them information and see, what lights them up, what shuts them down and causes them to kind of back away from the offer. This is very powerful stuff, Alan.
Yeah, and I swear I didn't get the idea from that movie Inception, but this is like, you're basically doing Inception here, right? You're creating the world for them and then like wanting them to pour their secrets into it. Like that's kind of what they do in that movie. I love that poetic language, right? It's like when we're trying to extract information from people, we construct this world. Like he's like, we'll make a room with a safe. And then, like, by definition, they will put their like secrets in the safe. So that's kind of what we're doing something like that here. We're trying to, construct this world from them, and like, can they put themselves in that world? Because if they can't, then you'll know that that there's limited or the high risk opportunity here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alan, do you want to share the Arlo example? I know we have a couple more minutes. I think that'd be a super helpful example to kind of close out on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll begin. I think what might be fun here is to show the end result. Why not? Let's
do it.
Let's. So this was. Make sure I'm showing the right thing here. All right. So if you see, okay, that's it. Where is it? So this was a product that was released, I guess maybe 2 years ago or a year. COVID threw everything off. Really, it's like a big time where I think
calendars don't work anymore. I'm with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I think it was beginning of 2020. Right. All right. And hey, look at this. Lots of good reviews here. Amazon's choice. This turned to be a tremendously successful product for Arlo. And we, I know I don't want to say that we predicted the success, but we predicted that there was low risk of introducing this product. But we did this study 2 years before this product was released. So we were able to effectively, anticipate how things would unfold 2 years before it came out, which is particularly important in the CPG world. That's actually a lot of our work. I mean, it applies for software too, but this simulated selection work is particularly necessary for the CPG world, because it takes, you got a line of vendors, you got a line of factories, you got to get the machines. Like it's huge.
It's a long lead time.
Yeah. And even here, I'll just turn off this. I don't know if the sound's gonna come through, but like, watch this little part, the little scene right here. This guy's like creeping around and looked at this, comes up on the person's phone, is looking in. Oh, what's going on there? Oh, okay, I gotta do that. So this is an ad for that device. And so now what I'll do for fun is now I will show you the study that we did. Let's see here.
I think everyone's going to freak when they see how similar it is.
Yes, there it is. So there it is. So you can see here, here's the guy creeping around the yard. You look at the thing, you get the notification on the phone, it comes up, they see it, and it comes right up. So like they even literally took the storyboard we use in front of consumers as validation for the product. Validation is a strong word, but test the product, and actually looks like they kind of hand over to the creative team, like make the ad out of this. which is also kind of comes back to what we're trying to do here. Again, ads are market information. It's just consumers are taking this in and coming to some interpretation of it. So you kind of are showing them ads, right, and seeing how how they react to it. It's the same thing.
It's interesting.
So here,
your own little infomercial right here.
Yes. Oh no. Well,
Walk
actually,
us through it, Alan.
excuse me. Yeah. So this was more of. So this was before Dream was a scenario where they had a product and were trying to fit into a situation, or like, what kind of futures can we, might we create with this product? So they were like a technology in search, I hate to say it, in search of a problem, but I don't want to say that, in search of an opportunity, right? This was the other way around, which is we were like, okay, we know directionally the kinds of experiences consumers want, but we're not really sure even what kind of products to make. So this was totally fuzzy things, right? And this was helpful because like Arlo at the time was already a camera company, a security camera company. So they had some idea what people were into, but they were trying to find more opportunities for variations of their products. And so we just kind of took was some basically built upon, because this is looking for like an adjacent possible product, not a completely, new thing. We were able to kind of build upon, some previous research, previous products that people were buying, experiences that they knew were like. So we knew that people were using security cameras to watch things at night, but how can we improve that product or experience and create adjacent possible products? So that's what this is. And we just put these different experiences in front of people. And again, here, there's barely any product here. There's no screens in here. Like, I think the most version of the product that you can maybe see is like this little corner here. I don't know what it is, but like that's all you get. It's not the floodlight camera that you saw before. It is totally different. So like we knew what type of experience the product was supposed to make. We just didn't know what the product would look like. So this is an example of what we're doing there. Let's see. I think I got to do the side here. Where's the navigator? But I'll jump to something else here. So when we're looking for multiply by zero factors, right? This is a good example of this. So they had this other idea called party mode. Because okay, we make these cameras. So, all right, well, what if instead of for security, we used it for some sort of like, they call it party mode, but yeah, kind of like sharing events or like broadcasting from your home. And so like, okay, well, that's all kind of how they were. And there was like lots of internal debate. Like some people loved it at the company, some people hated it, but they couldn't, like they were totally, log jammed.
Yeah. So the question is, hey, we're not sure what features to put into this thing. This is a feature that we're debating. Help us decide.
Yep. So we're like, well, let's put the, not the feature in front of people, but the experience in front of them and see how they react to it. The short of it is basically, I'll tell you, so out of say about 15 participants, I'd say 12 of them outright rejected it, like hugely. They were like, that is creepy. That is weird. Like, they were just like, no way. Because like, and this is again, how do we know that's reliable or valid? Because they were very imaginative about it. They would say like, look, like when I'm having a party, like I want people to like let loose and like have fun. That's their opportunity to actually be off camera. Like one guy even said like he's like, like what if my neighbor's wife is like fooling around with some guy and I catch it on camera? Like, what do? Do I tell them about it? Do I not? Like they're like, but that's what you do when you're shopping.
Well, it'll be part of the highlight reel.
Yeah. So like they were just like no, not for my parties. We're supposed to let go. We're supposed to be off camera, as it were. So that's what it is. But and again, maybe Rob, this goes back to your earlier question of like less about studying problems, but putting new experiences in front of people and seeing how they react. Another part of jobs theory is this understanding that a behavior that consumers do is called reinvention, which is where they will take an existing technology and adapt it in some way so it fits, so it affords them something new. Like, for example, a trophy, affords me, like, I can show off how cool I am, or personal accomplishment. Or I can put the trophy on the floor behind my door and it affords me, like, stop the door from opening, right? So it's where I reinvent the product to change its affordances. So three people did that, where they said, like, look, I would not do this for party mode, but you know what? I would use this. And they'd say, like, which is not here at all. They'd say, I would use this. Like, you know what? I forgot what it was, but they're like a reseller of, like, products, something like that. And they're like, I do these at home, like, how, like, those Tupperware parties kind of thing. Like, fashion. She was a fashion person. I do these trunk shows of, like, my jewelry. And, like, right now I just kind of go around to, like, things and, events or something like that, and kind of, on the sidewalk and try to sell my stuff. But if I had this, I could broadcast to Facebook. I could stream my trunk shows and promote my business. So now it's good. So it's for this. The other scenario where someone reinvented the product, she's like, I would not use this for party, like informal parties. But you know what? I host lots of charity events at my house. And right now I pay $3,500 for some video guy to come around and record it for me and edit it and so on and so forth. But if I had this, I could just set up a few cameras around the event, broadcast it, stream it live to Facebook for my donors to watch, or maybe watch at a later time, so that I could, kind of promote my charity, as it were, and my, get more money basically for my charity. Sure. And it'd be easier and cheaper and faster. And I could stream it live, and I don't have to deal with this video person, which might make people feel awkward, like guy walking around with a camera putting people's faces. Anyway, so that's, like, again, like going to, like, tapping into that mental simulation that consumers do when looking at some product and its affordances, and seeing how they react to it.
Love it. Alan, this has been so great. Thank you so much for sharing, these assets and real life, case study examples. I think that's super helpful. One of the things that we've been trying to do more of is, to talk about how new products is one thing, but just to kind of stay in the verbal and kind of headspace isn't good enough. I think that we really want to share tactically with people how to do this stuff on the kind of boots on the ground. And you've done that here today and showed, this really great stuff for simulated shopping. I think it's very powerful stuff. I think one thing that I would note, like, people have heard about, problem interviews and solution interviews. When I first saw this, I just knew right away this was something special, because typically if you're wondering out there, how is this different than a, solution interview? Often what that involves is like a clickable prototype. You show them something and then you ask, well, would you want to buy it? And I think this is a lot. There's a lot more here, with gradually revealing the messaging, the positioning, really being able to take them on a journey and to having these storyboards, if you will, to kind of help them imagine this future state where, like you said, it's almost not about the product at all here. Like, there's very little product in this example, right? It's more about them imagining themselves in this experience, and is that experience desirable? So fantastic stuff, Absolutely. Alan.
Yeah. Well, I hope it's helpful and inspirational to people.
So where can people find more about Alan? How do they connect with you?
Man. So there I am on Twitter, but I have not, because I've been working so much, have not been tweeting much. I would say, reveal.market is our consulting business right now. If they want to contact us through there, probably, and follow me on Twitter. Soon we'll be releasing the totally revamped, educational content, which will be for free, videos and all that kind of stuff around jobs theory, because we want to help people be successful at it. Then also we'll be releasing some educational content around how to do simulated selection. So how to design these studies, how to plan for them, how to evaluate success, how to create predictions out of it. So that's, follow me on Twitter or sign up and follow us around on Revealed.
Wonderful. Alan, thanks so much for joining us today on Exploring Product. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.